You know what's really hard? Breaking a bad habit. Probably have some right now that you're trying to break. But for every one you break, there are 10 more that take its place. But what if I told you there was a way to break any bad habit without willpower? First, identify the cue or trigger. Maybe it's when you're feeling stressed or anxious. Then the routine is actually biting your nails. And finally, there's a reward. Maybe it's the feeling of relief that you get from the action, or maybe it's just the distraction from whatever is making you anxious in the first place. That sounds too good to be true, but it's actually quite simple. Once you've identified the cue and the reward of your bad habit, you want to find a way to make the reward even more satisfying than it was before. But what if you could find a way to make it better? Maybe you could find a flavor of gum that you really love, or maybe you could make it a challenge to see how long you could chew it for without swallowing. Or maybe you could pair it with another activity that you enjoy, like listening to a podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. This way your brain will love the new routine even more and be less likely to revert back to the old one. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. How can I pair it with something else that I love? By following these steps, you can use the power of habit to your advantage and break any bad habit without willpower. This method comes from a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. What am I getting out of it? Then ask yourself, how can I keep the same cue and the same reward, but change the routine? Can I come up with a new routine that is just as satisfying or more satisfying than the old one? In the book, he talks about how habits are a cycle with 3 distinct parts. First, there's a cue or trigger that tells your brain to initiate the habit. If you want to break a bad habit, according to Duhigg, the key is to keep the same cue and the same reward, but to change the routine. Let me explain. Then there's the routine or behavior that makes up the habit itself. And finally, there's a reward that makes you feel good and reinforces the habit in your brain, so it's more likely to happen again in the future. For example, let's say you want to stop biting your nails. So now that we know how habits work, let's talk about how we can use that knowledge to our advantage. You see, when you have a bad habit, your brain loves the reward that it gets from it. So if you want to change the routine, you need to come up with something that is either just as satisfying or more satisfying than the reward you currently get. If I were to tell you to bite something else instead, like a piece of gum, then the cue would be the stress or anxiety. The routine would be chewing gum, which isn't really a bad habit, and the reward could be the same feeling of relief. In this scenario, your brain doesn't really lose anything when you switch from biting your nails to chewing gum. It's much more likely to accept the new routine. Otherwise, your brain will always default to the original routine, because it's what it's used to and it's what it expects. So let's go back to our nail-biting example. But what if I told you there was a way to make the reward even better than before? That's where this method becomes really powerful. Going back to the nail-biting example, maybe the reward you get from chewing gum is unquite as satisfying as the reward you get from biting your nails. So here's how you can use this method to break any bad habit. First, identify the cue and the reward. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? If you want to make the reward even better, ask yourself, how can I make this reward even more enjoyable? And if you want to learn more about how to make good habits, stick around for more videos.